Today, our guest is Nick Johnson. He's a member of the Mission43 Employment team, an Army veteran, and a military spouse. He has had his roles adapt over this past year within the employment team, and we're here to talk about that new role and some of his experiences transitioning to Idaho after the military. Let's get after it. Welcome to the Mission43 Podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the struggles and triumphs of transitioning to life after the military. I'm Dan Nelson. I'm a former Army Special Forces officer who's personally experienced the challenges of transitioning to civilian life. In every episode, we'll be sharing tips, strategies, and real-life stories of veterans and their families who've chosen Idaho for their life after the military. So join us, and let's start the conversation. Nick Johnson. Thanks for being here, Thick Nick.
Hey, appreciate it.
Well, so let's talk about some of the things that are new to Mission 43. One, you, kind of, even though people may or may not have seen you over the past year or so. We're a little delayed in the podcasting here. But since you've come to be a part of the Mission 43 Employment team, a la Hire Heroes USA, your role has actually changed from being the initial intro dude that I'm sure a lot of people out there have talked to. I mean, I say that, but the only people that watch are my mom and my dog.
Yeah, and maybe my mom.
Yeah, well,
after this episode.
Hey, we've tripled our viewers. It's perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what your role currently is here and what you're doing with Mission 43?
Sure. So I am currently the employer coordinator. So what we recognized was with Hire Heroes and Mission 43, we did a really, really good job of the enrollment part of getting those who signed up for employment assistance to, get enrolled with Hire Heroes, get provided a, tailored resume to what it is that they're trying to pursue in their civilian career. But what we really wanted to do was capture the ability to start tying in those individuals with employers across the state.
Everything we do at Mission 43 as far as education and employment is not just throwing darts at a dartboard. Everything is based on current needs, right?
Right, correct.
And what Hire Heroes does is resume writing, expert resume writing and tailoring for specific job sets and job fields, from military and military spouses to the civilian world. You do mock interviews, you do all these incredible things with the Hire Heroes, but the one thing you guys don't do is job placement.
Correct.
Because I appreciate this about Hire Heroes is they're so laser focused on their mission. But what we have here in the state of Idaho with Mission 43 and the employment team of Mission 43, Hire Heroes USA, it's a little different.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, there's a tremendous amount of resources on the other side with Hire Heroes from the volunteer network, being able to do the mock interviews, the salary negotiation prep, all of those sorts of things. What we really wanted to do was start tying in and showcasing our resumes and our clients directly to employers across the state. So as the employer coordinator, my job is to kind of build some rapport with these hiring teams or employers, owners of companies, other organizations, and be able to get resumes directly to these individuals or be able to make introductions to these to our clients or members. That way your resume goes as far as it can, but I think everyone knows that it's not always what you know, it's who you know. So networking is extremely vital to your transition process. And if you can't do that necessarily because of where you are and your current status with your military service or even as a military spouse, you're not geolocated here, how do you start doing that? Well, obviously you have LinkedIn as a professional platform. So you
never heard of it?
Right, yep. So it's this new thing that just came out, but
cool.
That's one avenue of approach that you can use. But once you get here, or once, you end up making your way to Idaho, how can we get you in touch and get you interacted with the actual hiring teams of these companies?
I think that's one thing, right? Because half the resumes that are looked at now are not looked at by a human being, right? They're screened by
ATS systems.
AI, yeah.
Yeah, AI.
Yep. I don't know what ATS system is, but
applicant tracking systems. So if you're not hitting those buzzwords when you're applying for specific roles within the job description, the ATS systems will immediately kick that as a appealing candidate.
That makes sense because I wrote the term buzzword about 100 times in my resume. Mm-hmm. No callbacks.
Oh, well, you didn't go through Hire Heroes.
Oh, no, I did not. I wrote my own resume.
Yes. Well, so did I to start out with. And then now that I'm through this, or with Hire Heroes, I've learned a tremendous amount of how can we beat the ATS system. Well, with the transition specialists at Hire Heroes, they do a fantastic job of that. But on the back end with Mission 43, our team is truly trying to play chess rather than checkers with these ATS systems and trying to beat or navigate around the ATS system to get you to an employer or an HR member.
I'm not trying to speak ill of other veterans organizations here in general, but like there's a lot of groups that say and promise the world like, hey, we have a network of a lot of employers here in the state of Idaho and we will get you plugged in. Mm-hmm. Although that network may just be like a thumbnail of someone's logo on their page, right? Yeah. That bothers me because that's not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, as Mission 43, as successful as we have been as a whole in getting people hired at quality employment, mm-hmm. starting salary around $70,000 versus the $46,000 like state average.
Yep.
But what really makes me happy is with your current role, it takes it to the next level because employers are not looking to have their ATS system fooled, right? Employers are looking for a trusted agency or trusted veterans organization to say like, hey, we're not going to send you schlubs. Mm-hmm. We're not going to send you anybody that's not worthy.
Sure.
And that takes the rapport that you talked about in my mind to say like, hey, we have this network of high-powered military veterans and spouses that are going to bring you value and give us a chance and you'll develop that trust, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's super important to with our whole team, we find, that this role or this job in placing people in the right career trajectory after their time in we just find it very, very important to us that we do a good job of vetting those individuals and making sure that, their outlook on what they want to do in their next phase lines up with the role that we're going to provide them with, some insight to. And then from there, we get it kind of a yay or nay from the member. Like, yeah, I would love to pursue this role. And we can go in our network and say, hey, well, we have someone that maybe we can introduce you to. We're not a headhunter recruiting service,
right,
or a job placement service.
No.
But what we can at least do is try to get you an introduction within our network for you to succeed with a proper resume once it comes to formally applying.
Well, you guys are also willing to have the hard conversations.
Yeah, a lot of come to Jesus moments.
Well, sure. I mean, that is that. And then instead of like just puffing smoke on somebody to, like when I first got out and I was looking to dance for the Thunder and Down Under crew, I contacted this team and I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. And, a couple pictures and a couple video demonstrations later, they're like,
was this a skit from SNL?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was with Patrick Swayze, I believe.
Yeah.
It was my opposing figure. But no, I mean, it's not always easy to give people the real answers. But like, hey, if you have 37 felonies, like you're not going to get a job in cybersecurity right now. Mm-hmm. You know?
Correct.
I mean, I'm obviously being facetious on some of these things, but like it is challenging to level set expectations and not just like, dogging somebody, like giving them a real perspective and a reasonable pathway to what they want.
Yeah, for sure. And on the flip side of that, like the employers have to trust us too. So if we're set, like you said, Joe Schmo, and we're sending them resumes or candidates that don't make any sense, we're not building any trust with that side of the house. So kind of to circle back to, are we having realistic expectations from the client or member who's pursuing this particular job? So making sure that we all align on all those fronts, and then the employer understands like, yes, okay, this looks like an individual that I'd like to pursue. That in turn, over time, will build a consistent relationship and trust and authenticity on what we do.
Yeah. I think one of the things that Mission 43 has learned, at least in my time here, right, is we made some mistakes in some of our surveying methods. And I'm bringing this up because it relates to employment specifically. For years when I got here, the talking point was employment after the military is the number one concern of military families in Idaho. Now, that's basically because our survey asked asked a question like, do you need money? And people are like,
No.
Yes,
No,
I do. I need money to live.
Money, yeah.
It's like, yes, I do. So having a good job is important. And the whole thing about Mission 43 is, I think, like, it's holistic. So it's not just how to just get a resume, just get connected to the right hiring managers, just get a network that can perhaps or certainly help you find the right place for you. It's also not just come for a workout, not just come for a group run, not just come for a coffee hour or happy hour. A lot of those things are intertwined, like getting the professional certification through our education. Like, it's multifaceted, right? But at the bottom, at the end of the day, employment still is an extremely part, because if people are asked the question, do you need money to live? Most people answer yes.
Yeah. It's absolutely true from the holistic standpoint that you said and how it all meshes together. I think if you're like, my biggest recommendation with Mission 43 being one of the newer individuals of the team and coming from, outside into Idaho, going to these coffee hours, these happy hour events, integrating yourself in the workouts, those little steps just give you so much more exposure to our network without me even having to do anything. You got to be able to put yourself out there a little bit, because utilizing all of those other resources that we have, not just me or the employment team, truly stacks up to kind of deliver the goal that you're maybe looking for.
Well, I mean, it's funny how often we hear that. Like, my introduction to Mission 43 before I worked here was a happy hour.
Yeah.
Brad Blair, like the guy that runs the Operation Resilient Path program, his first introduction to Mission 43 was going to Mission 43 tent and, hanging out with people at a random event, right? So, but let's talk about that, because we failed in our mission as Mission 43 to make Idaho the premier destination for life after your military service. You came here without us, right?
I did, yeah. And in a roundabout way, we were ready to leave Alaska. That's where my last duty station was.
Where are you from originally?
Originally, Florida. Florida man, no big deal.
Yes, you are.
We all have one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I lived in a few other states. I was stationed at Bragg, Liberty, whatever you want to call it.
Mother Bragg.
Yep. Lived in Missouri a little bit too. Wife's from lived in California. She's from Florida originally. So we've lived in a variety of places. Last duty station was Alaska. Came down by way of her work. And I didn't know anything about Mission 43. And oddly enough, when my wife started her job, some individuals, her colleagues, were letting her know, hey, you should probably check out this veteran organization called Mission 43.
Well, because you're not just a veteran, you're also a military spouse.
Yep.
Yeah. So your wife is a former Marine.
Correct.
Or
once a Marine, always a Marine.
I didn't say ex-Marine. I said former.
Oh, okay.
Former Marine, yes.
My bad. That's my intelligence.
I accept your apology. Yeah. Okay, here we go. But yeah, so you have this dual role, so does she. You come down here, and she is the catalyst to your involvement in Mission 43?
I wouldn't say that, but she definitely was the first person that brought awareness to Mission 43. And I just kind of threw it to the back of my mind. It was just, in my mind, like, unfortunately, these veteran organizations sometimes get a bad stigma. They kind of get treated as like a mandatory fun day with false promises, like a lot of them do.
Yep.
So I just thought nothing of it. And then fast forward a few months later, I was finishing up school at BSU and figured it was time to get a job. So I started shotgunning my application or my resume out to places. And one of those was...
Your homemade resume?
My homemade resume, yeah.
Perfect.
Was Hire Heroes USA through LinkedIn, believe it or not.
So you sent your non-Hire Heroes resume to Hire Heroes?
Correct. Yep. Didn't even use Hire Heroes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they love me for that one. But it was a good interaction. And it was my first kind of wake-up call of, hey, your resume is horrible. That's literally what they said in my interview.
So you've talked to Zach Tibbetts as well.
Yeah.
We had that same conversation.
Yeah, good. For sure. And it was just an eye-opening experience. Like, wow, there's a lot that I after I got employed with Hire Heroes and then became a teammate at Mission 43. But to reflect back on my old resume, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it was horrible.
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. Since you were banned from the state of Florida due to the Detty Pratt tragedy, I'm just kidding, none of that ever happened. And you lived different places, but what was your Army experience like? Because you are an Army veteran, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I started out in the National Guard. I was a National Guardsman. I was still 11 Bravo, so went to Benning like every other infantryman. Was in Florida for a little bit, and then got a offer to be a CrossFit instructor out in Missouri.
Nice.
So transferred states out to Missouri, and then did that for a little while at a pretty cool gym.
The jewel of the Midwest.
Yeah, it was the Show Me State. It was pretty sweet. Springfield, Ozark area. If you ever get to Lambert's out there, I highly suggest it. They got throwing rolls. It's kind of their...
What are throwing rolls?
So every tour bus that goes down to Branson goes through Lambert's, which is this giant restaurant where you pull up and they got their giant 1-gallon sweet teas that they serve you, and they throw these hot, huge, buttery rolls at you. And they're like the Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady of roll throwers. Like, you just sit there, you throw your hands up.
The Troy Aikman
They're
at
hitting
UCLA.
on a dime. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, where were we going with that?
Throwing rolls.
Yeah.
Why, are they thrown at you?
They're literally thrown at you. They are throwing rolls at you in the restaurant. Yeah, you just put your hands up and someone's there with a hot rack of rolls, and they're just whipping them at you.
This sounds like a dangerous and also familiar family activity that we participate in our house with my boys.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So
okay.
If you ever make your way through Springfield, Missouri, check it out, Lambert's.
But that wasn't enough for you, living the life in the Ozarks.
Nope. Table Rock Lake was pretty sweet, but I really felt that there was a calling for me to go active duty. So that took forever for me to put in my release from the National Guard.
Yeah.
I harassed my readiness NCO, even drove to Joplin, Missouri, to try and get some paperwork signed by some bigwigs, but no one would entertain me. So went back to my unit. My readiness NCO finally called me one day, said, "Hey, your paperwork's been signed, your release, you're good to go active duty."
Cool.
So signed an X-ray contract.
One of us.
Yeah, the greatest recruiting tool the airborne community has.
Yes, the 18 X-ray contract.
Yep. So,
which means, for those that may not be familiar, like, you joined with the guarantee that you would be able to go to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, SFAS, right?
Correct. Right off the street. Yep.
Right. So your goal was to be a Green Beret.
Yeah, that was. Yep, that is correct. Got to X-ray land, which was an absolute fun time.
How old were you now?
I joined, I went to basic 2012. So 22 years old, I went to basic. I waited a little while. I was floundering. I was lost.
Yeah.
I mean, we can circle back, too, if we want to kind of go how we get there.
No, Florida law prohibits that, actually, talking about that time.
Yeah.
No.
No, it was, I just was truly lost. Like, high school sports and sports in general were just a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
And leaving a program like it was in Florida that was very regimented, very success-driven.
You went to a big-time program there.
Yeah, and I really loved how that whole organization was just run.
Yeah.
And I thought that the military probably captured that the most outside of sports. But I was just too much, I'll be completely honest, like a pansy to join right after high school.
Join the club.
Yeah, so I thought, well, I'll go play football at a NAIA school in Missouri. That's kind of how I ended up in Springfield.
Okay.
Coming back to Springfield. Played a year of ball and at an NAIA school. Spent more time getting in trouble than I did actually going to school. Figured out that wasn't the place for me. Left, went back to Florida, and then ended up back in Missouri coaching. So
fast forward to 18 X-ray land.
Yeah, and then was there, met some of the best people that I've ever met in my entire life, the toughest dudes I've ever met, ever. That place was an absolute suckfest, and I loved it. But unfortunately, it kind of broke me. I went to selection, was injured, medically dropped the first time, got kicked and rolled back 2 classes later. didn't in my opinion, probably didn't have enough time to recover, but that system has to keep going, and I get it. I can't hang out in X-ray land forever. So went back the second time on the STAR course, stepped in a rotted stump, foot stayed, the body went, medically dropped one more time. So yeah, then I went to OT, got kicked to the conventional Army up in Alaska, and kind of bounced from there to Bragg, and then got out from Bragg back to Alaska.
And during this time, or maybe before this time, you get married, you start a family.
We left all that out.
Yeah, that's
it's completely unnecessary.
Hey, dreams and goals, selection, like all that stuff is important. But by the way, blah blah blah, kids, blah blah blah, wife.
Yeah, met my wife.
I'm kidding. Please don't kill me.
Yeah, no, my wife, my incredible wife. I absolutely adore her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, along with my kids.
And
then Mission43 meeting Dan. And Zach. Sorry, I should throw Zach out there too.
I mean,
yeah, Zach and Dan.
Okay.
Dan the most.
All right.
Anyway, but yeah, no, I met my wife previous to me going active duty. I met her. I had already gone through basic training with the Guard.
So she volunteered for that too.
She did, yeah, which was interesting because as a former Marine, her going through this process as a spouse now was, I think, actually a complete blessing in disguise. Because as you know, going into the military, if you are bringing someone along that has no experience with kind of how that beast works, it can be very troublesome.
It was a blessing for you.
Correct.
Probably a challenge for her, perhaps.
Oh, maybe. Well, I don't know. I think that what she gave me was a lot of insight on what my life was going to be. And the other part was
suck.
Right. Yeah. And the other part was she knew how to deal with it as a spouse because she understood what my requirements were through my job. Yeah. So.
Well, so you're in the Airborne Infantry was brigade, right? Up there in Alaska.
Yeah, 425. I was with the 3509th.
Cool. And then spent some time at Mother Bragg again, this time in the 82nd Airborne, right?
Yeah, 2508.
Oh, 2505 is really what's at, but either way. And then, so then you take this jump into civilian life. And did you have a job or did you start right with college and do the GI Bill route?
No, I got out up there in Alaska, and then because my wife and kids were still up there, I left them when I did my last year at Bragg. Left them for almost a year, which was a whole nother story in itself. But after I had just deployed too, so 6 months home, and then left for Bragg, came home, got a job pretty quick with an excavating company. We were doing foundational repair on homes that were affected by the 2018 earthquake that happened up there, which was 7.4 or 7.5. One of the biggest ones since 62 that they had. I thought I was going to be A-okay transitioning because I had already lived a civilian life before, and I was pretty mistaken. I had a hard time relating, or at least I was holding a lot of people accountable for things that they had no idea what that meant for me. And I had some struggles that I just had to deal with on my own as well. So hopping right into a job was an okay thing because it kept me occupied, but it didn't last long. Just kind of butted heads with my boss and ended up honestly kind of regretting how I did it, but I just left kind of on site one time. I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. The level of requirement that you're having me kind of do these duties is far beyond what I'm capable of, and I just felt like there was other things that were going on in the background that I had to deal with. So it was just a combination of things that didn't work out.
Well, talk about the other things while you're in this period of transition. Like, what were the struggles for you? Because that's kind of what we talk about here for the most part is different struggles. Now, I pointed that way because, I retired in 2019 and I'm still struggling to, some extent.
Yeah.
But what were yours?
I think that I left feeling like I didn't fulfill what I wanted to do, which was the Special Forces route. Because I never got like the, hey, you are selected, or hey, you're not what we're looking for. And that really bothered me. I could have definitely gone back, but that still eats me alive that I never got that answer. But I just felt that I had failed twice, and it was time to just move on to the next thing, which ended up working out great because I did get a great experience with the airborne community in Alaska. I got to deploy. I got to attach to an ODA, 2 ODAs. We got to do kind of a cool deployment with them. So I got to fill that bucket a little bit. Then I left, and then I also, what else happened was I started to really kind of judge myself because where I was in life, age-wise, I compared myself a lot to kind of my peers. I wasn't in like a career trajectory at all. I had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, but there was like my own purpose wasn't filled. So I was really struggling with my own self-confidence, a lot of insecurity of I'm not a real husband, I'm not a real dad because I'm not doing anything anymore that makes sense to me with purpose. I'm just kind of, again, now I'm floating along again like I was prior to joining active duty.
When did that change for you, or how did that change? Or has it?
It has, for sure. Absolutely. It took me calling a hotline, like, not to get like into that deep of a crevasse there, but I fell into a real hole and just walked out into the woods one night and ended up calling a hotline because I just hit a bottom.
Yeah.
But the hotline was great. It gave me a good wake-up call that I needed to get my shit straight. So I reached out to the VA and actually got into counseling.
Well, how does that happen then? Like, how do you go from, because I think everyone's reading between the lines. That's because we've been there.
Yeah.
We know what taking a walk into the woods means. And one phone call really turned that around for you?
I think the person on the other line I think me talking out loud rather than it building up in my head made it make more sense that I knew what was right. That wasn't right. The path I was going down, and whatever you may call it, self-pity. And I never had been that way. I was just a very happy-go-lucky guy, and here I am feeling like this, and I'm willing to take away not only my life, but the people that I committed to, or I helped create.
A father for your kids.
Yeah. So the person on the other line just did a really good job of just remaining extremely calm, accepting what I was saying, but saying like, hey, we need to get you some help. And there is help. So I was just proactive, and I believed that there was help. I believed in the process of getting counseling, and I believed that what I was going to do whenever I do anything, it's with intent, with an actual, we're going to do this for a reason.
That's very clear.
Yeah. So I cut drinking way back, because I had stopped like exercising, which I'm a gym rat. I love going to the gym. I stopped doing a lot of things that I love. Ultimate signs of depression, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I need to continue to do these things and just be consistent and kind of get these small victories day in and day out, and then mesh that with counseling, but it took me 2-3 counselors to get to the right one, which I think is another important thing that a lot of people do talk about, but I'll just reiterate it again.
Yeah.
It may not happen the first time, the second time, third time, but if you find someone that you're comfortable talking to, like, it can go a long way. And again, back to my wife, like, she was awesome because she told me, hey, you're going to have a hard time when you get out because of things that you're just not used to. Like, your lifestyle completely changes, your mission feels so different, your purpose feels so different, and that can be kind of hard to wrap your head around. And she was completely right, but her patience, along with everything else that I did for myself, helped me out a ton.
Yeah. It's interesting that she told you when you were in the Army, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
And then when you were about to leave, this is also going to suck.
Mm-hmm.
And it did, both of them. I'm curious then, so how long are you talking in this period? Because someone like me listening out there or watching out there is like, okay, cool, this dude turned it around. He's good now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well,
Oh, is it a month, 6 months, 6 years?
Probably a year. It took me to get, or 8 months, 8 to 9 months. I think that's when I started to feel myself really slip, like down into the depths. And then I was probably around roughly a year where I sought actual help. And I got myself back enrolled in school at UAA up there, University of Alaska in Anchorage, which I think also helped.
Yeah.
I needed to stimulate my mind and not just give myself all this dead time to, in my own self-pity.
There's only so many internet rabbit holes you can go down and chase conspiracy theories.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if there's necessarily like a time frame that you can give anybody, because I think we're all different, right? But for me personally, it was roughly a year, where I started pursuing actual help and trying to attack it.
Well, and then since then, how long has it been, like from now until that point when you started getting help?
It's probably been about 2.5 years. I stopped just over 2 years, because we've been here in Idaho for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just had stopped talking to my counselor pretty much right when I moved, because I was going to have to change over through the VA here and go through their system.
What are you doing now as far as keeping up the momentum that you've gained? I mean, it doesn't have to be counseling, but like you said, you stopped working out. You're obviously working out now. Mm-hmm. So, like, what are you doing currently that's making Nick tick?
As far as like staying positive, or just keeping going every single day?
I would say either, but keeping you in a healthy and productive place.
I think for me, I communicate with my friends that I met. I have 2 best friends in particular that I met at basic training, another one that I met at selection, and just being able to communicate with them almost daily, whether it be through text, through some bullshit meme, whatever keeps me sane.
Those are important.
Right. Keeps me checked in, and I'm very comfortable telling them, like, hey man, I'm just having a bad day. Can you just chat for 5-10 minutes? And they're always willing to take that time. And I'm equally the same with them, because they go through the same thing. And then obviously having now with Mission 43, it's almost a sense of counseling on my own with the service that I give these members of ours. When I get to talk to them, we don't just talk about employment. I want to get to know them individually. And for me, I feel like that's a way of my own counseling. It's selfishly, because I understand what it's like. So, and then I get to lean on colleagues like you and Brad, Chad, Zach, everybody at Mission 43 within the team. Like, we all kind of are cut from a similar cloth in a sense of experience, so we can lean on each other a little bit there, here and there.
I think it is quite a gift for me, probably a curse for you guys, but yeah, you all get to take your turns being unlicensed clinical counselors for me and everyone else on the team.
I'm YouTube certified.
Oh, good. All right, well, just print out your certificate on the way out here, and we'll go from there. But so what do you think is next for Mission 43? I mean, you've been here for a year. You're not new. But, like, what do you see as the big shifts that are either happening or happened in your time here?
Well, I think between employment and education, the sky is really the limit. And I think that we are truly starting to see how much traction both of those pillars are making. And then you tag team freaking the engagement events that we have, like with the field house, the new bright and shiny toy, showcasing that space for our members. I think it shows like we're serious. We're not here to just talk to you over the phone. Like, no, we want to create this space where we want to highlight what you've done in your military experience or not, but also give you the space to build a community here within Mission 43, and then project it out to wherever you are within your own community, within your own job, within your own families. So it's hard to say like specifically where I see Mission 43, other than its growth is just going to be, I think, just such a monster of pure holistic success. I wish every state had something like it.
Yeah. It is unique, and we're quite lucky here. And I guess I'd ask, like, what advice do you have for somebody, either military veteran or military spouse, that's in Idaho or thinking about coming to Idaho? Like, what advice would you give them?
Well, first, sign up with
Mission43.
Yeah. Get tapped in with your local veteran community somehow, way, shape, or form. If you feel like you're missing that piece of your identity, because it wasn't just a job, it was a lifestyle, and it's going to be a staple for the rest of your life that you'll never forget. And I think it's important to keep that fabric going really throughout your entire life. For someone to say that I can just kind of forget and let it all go, that's pretty impressive.
I'd say it's fairly unique.
Yeah, I think that. So if you're coming to Idaho, obviously going to Mission 43 events, and that's the easiest way to get tapped in with that community. But just leaning on that veteran space is pretty important.
Well, Nick, I truly appreciate you being here. I appreciate getting to know you and your family over this past year. Your wife is now a part of our Leaders Fellowship. You have not been selected yet, just so you know.
Application denied.
Well,
again,
just approved over or beneath hers. But either way, no, man, I think you have an incredible story, and you've done incredible things here with our team. I appreciate you as a friend and as a coworker, but honestly, I just am really excited to see where you take this thing next, because you're just starting out in this new role within the new role, and it's something that's been a missing link that we now have, and it's the right person to do it. So thanks for being here, and thanks for doing it, man.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for the Mission43 Podcast. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you have any questions or feedback, please comment below or email podcast@mission43.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Be proud of your service, not defined by it. See you next time.